All right. We are in podcast number dos. If this is your first time tuning in and you don't know, you are listening to or watching In the War Room. This is my studio. It is called The War Room, and we are currently in it. Current happenings in the Magic world, we are looking at the current release of Aether Drift. I am not really excited about this release. It looks like there might be a few singles that I could pick up. I'm not huge into the Commander format. I'm more of a standard player. It's not like I'm going to go out and buy a booster box of these things or like a bundle or something where I get a lot of the set. I'm not that interested in it. I'm looking forward to the supposed Spider-Man release from Marvel later this year. If I hadn't mentioned it before, I am currently way into this game on the Xbox called Planet Coaster. I am such a nerd about it and the physics that go into designing rides and stuff that I spend hours upon hours from time to time putting together parks and rides and stuff with this game. It is a design type game. Well, anyway, we've been on version 1 forever now. Seems like forever. I think the first one released in 2016. So it is now, the end of 2024. Now we're in 2025, and they have just released Planet Coaster 2, which one is not available on my current version of Xbox. Sad face. But I might be able to throw it onto my laptop if I'm so inclined, or we might be looking at getting another Xbox or a PS5 or something. You know, we might look into that a little bit later this year. I'm not super keen on jumping over to the second version just yet. It's only mere months, like maybe 2 months, or I think it was October. Was it October? We're a few months away from, or a few months past the release. And so there's bugs still being worked out and updates and fixes and things like that. I got kind of, let me backtrack. I got kind of spoiled with the first version because I didn't get into it until all of this had already happened. I mean, I think it was 2020 or 2021, maybe 2022, when I got really hard into this Planet Coaster thing. I just happened to see it on Game Pass and was like, "Ooh, let's give this a try. This looks fun." And I absolutely fell in love with it. But by that point, they already had a whole lot of DLCs and a whole lot of patches and fixes, and had fixed a lot of the things that the community had brought forward as, "Oh, this is a problem." So where am I currently with my studio, the War Room? Where am I sitting? I'm sitting in this chair. I'm sorry. It's been a long day already. Anyway, I have yet to put together my 500 series modules in the racks. I am wanting to film a more like a video. I'm wanting to do an episode of Daily Tech. And speaking of which, I have already put together the opening sequence for those videos. I am super excited about that. So stay tuned. That's coming down the line in the next month or so. We will have a Daily Tech explaining all about my 500 series modules. Speaking of 500 series modules, I have recently really gotten excited and into the Melcor 1731 that CAPI has just redesigned or re-released CAPI has done it, and also a company called Audioscape Engineering. They have a dual mic pre that they released maybe a year ago, and for NAMM this year, uh, as of recording this is right after the NAMM weekend. Um, they've released the CL20 compressor that's based in Melcor 1731 op amp land. And I'm really interested in this because I heard some audio samples from an old school AM27, which is well, if you're in the industry, you know what API is, the API 512 or the 312. API gear is very sought after, very, considered some of the best equipment out there. There's entire consoles. The preamps are great. The EQs are great. The compressors are great. They don't make a single bad thing. It's just one of those companies where anything you get from them is going to be absolutely wonderful. Well, anyway, the AM27 is the predecessor to the API, and the AM27 being a microphone preamp. I listened to some sound examples and a comparison between a BAE, which is Brent Averill Engineering. He's someone who rebuilds old school API and Neve gear, and he put some 312. He's got a 312, or the company has a 312 preamp that is accurate to the original design of the 312. So I've been listening to some comparisons between the BAE 312 and a re-racked old school AM27 card, and it's not hugely different, but it ended up sounding fuller, like it sounds better. Like, how could it get any better than an API 312? Well, AM27, I don't know, it has this texture about it's hard to explain. I know that there's some kind of like harmonic distortion, some kind of breakup that happens in the mid-range that just paints this beautiful picture on female vocals, on male vocals, on instruments. It just sounds musical. I can't explain it. It's got this fullness about it, and it's real big, thick, and creamy, like buttery. It just sounds like money. And so, Audioscape about a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago, made a faithful recreation of a dual channel, AM27 card and the preamp. And they're starting what happened was Melcor went out of business, and there was someone who purchased the business, and it became MAP. And so those designs are what Audioscape is recreating, and it is that lineage. All right, where do we go from here? Yes, I have my notes on my phone. All right, mental health check-in. How am I doing right now? I am absolutely wonderful. Again, I think what I used last time was I am fan-freaking-tastic. Well, I am doing absolutely wonderful. I have adopted a meditation routine in the mornings when I come home. I don't just come and quickly, center out, recenter. I'm actually taking about half an hour to meditate on things and to pray and to get calm. And what I discovered is with my mental health, I am a very anxious person. I have a lot of nervous, anxious energy. I have a lot of bad energies, from time to time that builds up. And what I've discovered is I hold that in my chest. And if I have that built up and I suddenly face an adverse circumstance just in life, sometimes all of that, it's like the pressure valve, all of that just releases, and I end up I could come across angry. I could come across with a terrible tone. I could end up treating people, just in a bad way. And that's after the fact, that also is a cycle in and of itself. And it makes me absolutely, one, embarrassed, two, terrified of how I've treated people, and I have to do a lot of repair work. And I was done with all of that. So I wanted to start putting myself in a better place. So I'm taking the time, every morning when I come in from work, I'm taking about 20 minutes, half an hour. I'm really focusing in on relaxing and letting this nervous energy fade away. I'm focusing. It's like, this fades away, and this, I'm not going to get all new agey on you. Another thing that I've started doing, and this, I kind of chuckle at this. Last year, when I started the recentering in the morning, I wanted to start journaling to journal my progress with my mental health, and I made one entry in January and did not do a single thing the entire rest of the year. So I have picked back up with that. I've made another entry, and I'm going to do another entry this weekend. Which, by the way, this is January, about to be February. So by the time you are either listening to this or watching it on YouTube, it will be February, and I will have made another journal entry. I think that the journaling really helps me consolidate my thoughts, because, sometimes it takes me a while to really figure out what exactly is going on. I mean, it really is like, if you're ever experiencing something like that, where you reach a situation, you're like, well, I don't know how I feel. And someone's like, well, how do you feel? And you don't, like, I've got such nervous anxiety around things that it takes me takes me some time to actually stop, slow down, and do an inventory real quick and go, how am I actually feeling about this thing right here? And then to communicate that, to put it into words. Sometimes I find it extremely difficult when I've held stuff right here, when it's built up. I don't want to let what's here out, because it's like, I know myself. I'm like, wait, this is bad. I don't want to just release the pressure valve. Let me work on finding a constructive way to put together what's going on inside, what's going on in here. Can you understand that? Yes, my mental health is a struggle sometimes. All right, let's look at my notes again. Only thing left on the docket, story time. And if you didn't know it, I am in my job right now is television broadcasting. I work in what is called a hub. It is master control. What I do is I control the master signal from a TV station here in Atlanta. And I'm not going to name any names as to the networks I work for. I'm just trying to strictly keep, cover all my bases, keep it CYA. But I work for a couple of stations for New York, and I work for a station in Baltimore from my workstation in the building here, over the wide area network. And it is absolutely wonderful. I have moved into television. I moved into television back when we lived in Macon, because my first broadcast job was in radio, and I was on. Let's see, and this is the story. I'm talk about. I got a couple of things about my radio days that's pretty funny, but I worked for a company, again, we'll rename nameless, but if you lived there and you know me, you know the station I worked for, because I was absolutely proud of that job. Anyway, I worked for a country station. I worked for and this is all at the same time. I worked for a country station. I worked for a classic rock station. I worked for an adult contemporary station most of the time. And it was a cluster of all these different stations. There was a news talk radio in there. I did some work for them. Not on air work, but I did some like producer type work, board op for some of the shows that they had in the afternoons there for a sportscaster. And I put baseball games on the air. That was really, really neat. I have a funny story about when I did that, about a baseball team that was in Macon at the time, and I'm double checking my notes here. But anyway, I digress. Just setting up the stories. I was working in radio, and I had I have two small things that I just wanted to hit on. One of the things that I did, part of my job when I was there, was the production of local television commercials. I came in and I helped, actually put together the commercials, record the audio and build the commercials. And again, I'm not going to name names, but and also, again, if you lived in the area, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There was this car dealership, and the gentleman had his granddaughters come in all the time to record the commercials. And he did this for his television commercials as well. But, I mean, because it was his thing. It was like his gimmick. And they were absolutely wonderful commercials. But I can remember these little girls being there and just having trouble one day. And this is where I adopted this particular method. And I still use this method when I'm recording vocals and when I'm doing things. And if I'm giving away a secret here, just know that this is a thing with me. What I end up doing is I tell the client, and I told them, let's do a practice run. Let's practice it real quick. Let's get the nerves out. Let's see how this is going to roll off, and then we'll roll on subsequent takes. And so, by this point, as I'm telling them this, I'm already up and rolling, and they don't know. And so, it's going, and I proceed to, get with the girls, because all nerves are gone. They don't, it's, I think this is called like red light syndrome or whatever, but they were able to get a really good take. And then, I didn't touch anything. And I told, because they couldn't see my computer screen. And I told them, and I grabbed the mouse and I, pantomimed. And I said, all right, now we're rolling. Take one. Let's see if we can get it. And I did another couple of takes. And without telling them, I went back and played the very first one for them. And, they liked it. And I played the subsequent ones. And they were like, yeah, those are good, but we really like that first one. And the reasoning behind that is, it's the red light syndrome. If you're recording, then all of a sudden you get claustrophobic. You're like, oh, I've got to get it right. We're under the gun here. And it's like, So if I can take that out of the equation and get a very natural sounding, very cute, these little girls were great. If I could get the copy, which is the words, if I could get what they have set up to land, then I've done my job. Now, I was only working for 25 hours a weekend. This was a part-time gig, and I could have just come in here and recorded the thing and been done with it. But if you know me, that's not my style. If I'm going to do something, it's going to be the best that I can make it. I want to, whoever I'm working with, I want them to be, and for them to be portrayed in the best light. as possible. So if I have that ability, if I have that thought process, that's what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter how much money I make. It doesn't matter if I'm paid to do it or not. I'm just going to do it. That's what I do. I'm a nice guy. One of the other things that I was responsible for when I worked in radio was the production of the syndicated weekend runs of shows. Like we had Dee Snider, House of Hair, which is like a metal show, and Dee Snider recorded it in his studio and sent us the show segments, and it was my job to put, get the show segments, and this will show you my age. Back then, we got them on CD. I had my little mailbox at the office, and I got a CD of that weekend's show. And it had all the show segments, and it had all of the barter. It's called barter spots. It's spots that we agree to air for payment for the content. Okay. So we got a CD with the show segments and the barter spots on them. And it was my job to take those segments, put them into the computer, put them into the log with our own locally sold commercials, and format it out and get it good, sounding good. So it would roll off on the weekend without anyone being there, with the automation. So, I was a local producer of syndicated shows, and I can't remember, there was like In the Studio with Redbeard and some kind of NASCAR show for the country station, and there was a bunch of syndicated shows that I was personally responsible for, and that was part of my job, was putting all of those together. And I can remember one morning I was in a little bit of a hurry, and what I was able to do is, you've got to rip in these things. It's like you start them playing on the CD player, through the board, and you record them in to the computer, and they've got to be done in real time. And so, sometimes you've got like 20-minute segments and 30-minute segments of like the talking and the music and stuff like that. And then it breaks for the local break. Well, I would start the segment going, and then, I would be needed in another studio, like the production studio. So I would go and I would work on putting some commercials together for a while, and then I would come back to one of the other studios, and where I'm ripping in the show, and trim off dead air, because it would eventually stop, and you would have a trail. Well, one of these times I completely forgot to remove that dead air at the end of the segment, and it went into the log, and would have aired with 20 minutes of dead air, because I forgot to check for it. And I had, again, I'm not going to name names, but this was a supervisor that was above me come behind me and just double check, because he was what's called voice tracking, which is when you're a DJ, you voice track a shift, and which is you record into the playlist. So he was voice tracking. He happened to be voice tracking that the end of his shift, and then it was the show that I had been working on. So he was at the end of his show, and he saw all of that dead air. And he calls me up and he goes, "Hey, I just covered your ass." He was like, "I just saved us." He was like, "You really need to double check these things when you put them in." I mean, it was a learning experience, and I can guarantee you, my heart and my stomach hit my feet when he told me that. He was like, "There was 20 minutes of dead air, and I saved your butt." Well, that about does it for this one. That's another one under my belt. Hope you guys are doing well and continue to do well. Stay tuned. We got some really good stuff in the works. I've got a daily tech that I'm going to be doing. I also have a nerding out, and I also have a travel vlog that I'm going to be doing. It's all three kinds of videos coming in the next month or two. So, with that being said, see y'all later, and we'll catch you on the flip side.